Hello, and welcome to 80s TV Ladies. I'm Sharon Johnson.
And I'm Susan Lambert-Haddam. Here at 80s TV Ladies, we talk about female-driven television shows from, yes, you guessed it, the 1980s.
We are starting our dive into a new series looking at a groundbreaking 80s show for both women and television. Cagney and Lacey starred Sharon Gless and Tyne Daly and broke ground for women, seatbelts, and pop culture.
This detective drama ran from 1982 to 1988 on CBS and examines both the cases and the personal lives of two female police officers in New York City who are partners and work friends. Cagney and Lacey ran for 125 episodes and 5 television movies. It was nominated for 36 Emmys and won 14. Sharon Gless was nominated for 6 and won 2. Tyne Daly nominated for 6 and won 4.
In addition to being about two working police women, it was a show with episodes that dealt very thoughtfully with issues like cancer, racism, immigration, rape, alcoholism, and abortion.
I'm calling this episode 2 Pilots, 3 Cagneys. Well, okay, it was really not 2 pilots. It was a TV movie and then a TV pilot, but there were indeed 3 Cagneys. Yes, 3 actresses played Cagney over the course of these 2 pilots and several seasons. The first television movie was Loretta Swit from MASH, who played Cagney. And then for season 1, it was Meg Foster. And then they basically were going to cancel the show. And so they came back in season 2 with a new Cagney, and it was Sharon Gless, who stayed on for the rest of the season. The Lacey was always played by, indeed, Tyne Daly, ever impressive, steady as a rock.
Our guest today is Barney Rosenzweig. He is an Emmy Award-winning television producer and philanthropist. He is the creator and producer of Cagney and Lacey, as well as the Trials of Rosie O'Neill, also starring Sharon Gless.
In addition, Rosenzweig produced hundreds of hours of primetime television, including a dozen episodes of the premiere season of Charlie's Angels, the Daniel Boone series for NBC, and the critically acclaimed and award-winning Our Family dramas Christie for CBS and Twice in a Lifetime for the Pax Network. He is also the author of the book, Cagney and Lacey and Me.
Barney Rosenzweig went to powerhouse writers Barbara Avedon and Barbara Corday, his wife, to get them to write a female buddy action movie. And he's going to tell us about the incredible journey of making Cagney and Lacey into an award-winning, groundbreaking series.
Welcome to the show, Barney. Thank you so much for joining us here at 80s TV Ladies.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be here.
How are you?
Excellent.
We are excited to talk about Cagney and Lacey and the other shows that you worked on. We were talking before we started recording about a little bit of your background, and you grew up in Southern California. Can you talk about sort of yourself, where you grew up, and how you kind of decided you wanted to get into TV and movies?
I was second generation Angelino. My dad was a school teacher. I was interested in performing. I was an actor in school. I was the MC of all the shows that we put on. I was the head cheerleader in high school, and for that matter, at the University of Southern California. I remember my mother filling out a form for me. I was like 8 years old with the YMCA. I was going to go away to camp, and they asked what my chosen profession might be. I put up stand-up comedian. Now, why the YMCA wanted to know what an 8-year-old wanted to do with the rest of his life, I have no idea. That's how I remember. So it goes back a long way. I wanted to be a stand-up comic. I wanted to be a performer. And ultimately, I wanted to be an actor. And my drama teacher in high school, so kind of a mediocre public high school, but he was a big fan of mine. And he got me a scholarship, the Art Institute of Chicago. And I wanted to go. And my mom, biggest blow was she didn't think I was good looking enough to be an actor. This is from my mother, you know. So, but in fairness to her, Tyrone Power was an actor, you know. Errol Flynn was an actor, but this was before Dustin Hoffman or Jack Nicholson or any of the guys who looked more like normal people. So anyway, she didn't think I could do that. She said, well, she wanted me to be a school teacher like my dad. And if I wanted to do acting as a sideline, get the degree, have a job, and then you could try it. So my mother was powerful, and I was intimidated enough to agree. I didn't rebel, but I did rebel in a way. My dad was as I said, a public school teacher. My mom was almost a recluse. And I guess what would today be called kind of a serious psychological disorder. And she never went out of the house. She never got a professional beauty treatment or haircut. She never owned a store-bought dress. Her mother made it, cut her own hair. And to punish them for not letting me go to Chicago, take advantage of themselves, I picked the most expensive university I could find in California, which was the University of Southern California, which meant that my mother had to go get a job. So I didn't throw myself out into the world at 17. I threw my mother out into it. And my mother got a job at Human Resources. Her mother fixed her up a dress. She washed her face, put on lipstick for the first time that I can remember, and went out and got a job. So for her to do that, for that depressing personality, and actually then put me through college and my brother through college. So she was kind of an impressive dame in her own way. And I'm very grateful. So I went off to USC. And at USC, I confronted, for the first time in my life, fairly organized anti-Semitism. SC was a bastion of conservatism, white Anglo-Saxon backgrounds. The erstwhile president, now chancellor of the university, was a geneticist and a Nazi sympathizer. Part of the Nazi movement, German movement in California.
Interesting.
Rufus B. von Kleinschmidt. And a lot of the guys who he hired were of similar. And the fraternity system was not very welcoming. And I'm just making the best of it. I've dated a girl, had a date with a young lady, Robert Young's daughter. Took her out, and we had a good time, but she never went out with me again. And I found out later on it's because her sorority fined her $25.
Oh, my God.
For going out with a Jewish kid.
Wow.
I have no idea what they charge for Hispanics or black kids, but it was $25 for a Jew. So that was kind of the environment.
In light of all of that, did it surprise you then that you were admitted to USC or?
Oh, no. There was a quota system.
Okay.
They had a certain amount of Jews. I would never have been able to get in today, not because of that reason, but because I wasn't academically strong enough. Now it's a very fine university. And it wasn't up to the level, even close to the level that my mother begged me to go to UCLA, drop out of USC, go to UCLA. We'll buy you a Corvette, she said, which was a not insubstantial bribe in the 1950s. So I was, but I wasn't tempted. I said, Mom, I'm going to stay there, and someday I'm going to own that FSU. And I pretty much did.
I was going to say you were on the board of chancellors or something. Yeah.
Cinema Television.
Yeah.
I was also on the board of the library, but I was selected as alumni of the year. My mother was in the audience, seeing that moment. That was a biggie.
That's a good moment.
Yeah.
And I ran for election as for Yell King, which at USC was the biggest job that I looked at. You were Mr. USC. You were on vacation of the USC undergraduate. All girls sent you their panties in the mail. Travel with the football team. It was great. And there had never been a non-fraternity man elected. Never had been a Jew elected. So I got elected. I was the first Jew non-fraternity. And I was, if I may say so, a smash. I am for 30 years, or pretty much 30 years in a row, I was the guy they invited to the Bay Area game, whether it was Stanford or Cal, come to Union Square and to lead everybody in the SoCal spell out.
Nice.
And it's generally conceded I was the best. So I'm not talking out of school there. Anyway, I did a great job. I was excited. I got a lot of job offers from insurance companies and companies in Los Angeles where salesmanship, where your persona was important in terms of who you knew and who you didn't know. But I didn't want to do that. What I wanted to do, I thought, was I was interested in public relations. By the way, for anybody who didn't go to law school, everybody who didn't go to law school in my group wanted to be in PR. That's just what you wanted to do. He wanted to make $15,000 a year, have a little house in the valley with a picket fence. We all had it. Did you get married early? That's what you did in the 50s. It was the only way to go to bed with the girls. You had to get married. I mean, it was a different era. Major corporations of America would come to the university campus and they would interview 5 to 10 people, the top kids. I was always one of those kids. So not because of my grades, but because of my persona and what I had done and what I had accomplished, who I was on the campus. And I nailed those interviews. And the job I thought I wanted was with Procter & Gamble. The only drawback was you had to be in Cincinnati. That's where Procter & Gamble was. And it was a choice job. I thought I nailed the interview. Didn't get the job. I found out you can't be a member of the PR fraternity in Cincinnati, Ohio. You can't belong to the country club, which Jews could not do in Cincinnati. And the same was true in San Francisco with Bethlehem Steel Corporation. And my grandfather-in-law, I just got married in my senior year in college, very successful banker, had no problem with a Jewish grandson-in-law, but could not have a Jew work in the bank. That was out of the question for that. So I began to see this as a real disadvantage to the Jewish. I said, what can I do where it's not a disadvantage? And of course, show business came immediately to mind, but how to get started. And in the middle of that, I got a call from a pal of mine. They're looking for a PR guy at MGM Studios. I hope you don't mind. I gave them your name. And I interviewed them. I said, look, I'll be honest with you. I'm interested in learning about show business. I'm interested in getting into the gates. And they said, well, look, we're looking for a PR creature. Appreciate your honesty, but that's not what we're looking for. I said, well, thank you very much. They said, look, all right, I tell you what, you look like a nice young fellow. Got a nice tie and fingernails are clean. We'll give you, if you want it, you can have a job in the mail. So I took it. And I started in the mailroom at MGM. And we are in the throes that summer of preparing for a premiere or a movie on which the whole future of the studio is based. Most expensive movie ever made in the history of MGM. The most at stake at a time when the studio was very vulnerable. This was the era of the last picture show. People were running away from show business, not running to it. I was exercising what I came to understand was the philosophy of contrary opinion. When everybody zigs, I zag. And I've done that by now my whole career. That became a model for my life. And one day, everybody at the business department had to go into the boss's office. Howard Strickland. If you read anything about Hollywood, there's several people who are always mentioned. Louis B. Mayer, Jack Warner, Samuel Goldwyn, and Howard Strickland. His best friend was Clark Gable. His second best friend was Spencer Tracy. He was a good-looking guy, terrific guy, and an interesting guy. And he had a terrible, awful, debilitating stutter. Could not complete a sentence in under a minute and a half. I mean, it was really bad. I'll jump ahead for a moment. Years later, I went to his retirement celebration. When he'd been retired for a year, it was an annual thing. And he got up to speak to us, and he had no stutter.
Whoa.
It was gone. Outside of the pressure of that job, stutter went away.
Wow.
So anyway, we're all in his office. I'm 21 years old. I'm pressed against the back wall. Everybody else is, I'm the mailroom kid. And there's a big complaint about the fact that this opening night in Los Angeles, in Hollywood, California, Egyptian Theater on Hollywood Bowl, opening night was a big charity. And the charity was not doing its job. They weren't getting us any press at all. Who was the charity? The medical school of the University of Southern California. I raised my hand. Excuse me, I said, I'm very familiar with everybody at USC. I think I could be helpful. The movie was Ben-Hur, and I staged cherry race at the Coliseum and a football game halftime. USC card stunts did Ben-Hur card stunts. Tommy Trojan, who came riding on his horse, wore a costume from the movie. That's where that costume got invented.
Nice.
And I became a smash at overnight. But then what happened in that same time frame was a rare thing. The actors went on strike, that rarest of all strikes. And they went out and they were serious and they went out for some time and it shut the studio down, shut it down. And everybody in my department was let go except Howard Strickland and 3 other people. And I ran the mailroom and was the cheapest guy there. I could stay if I continued to do my job in the mailroom, continue to work on Ben-Hur, and then there would show up on Saturdays to the group salespeople and give talks as if I were actually the filmmaker. And I would give these lectures about how the movie was made and all this kind of stuff. And because I was the world's foremost authority on Ben-Hur. And outside of William Wyler and Charlton Heston, I guess. And if I do that job, do my regular job, and then do this, what they call the planting job, because I was being trained to be a planter. Planter is a press agent, plants stories with a journalist. Now, in those days, there are 5 newspapers in Los Angeles. Willa Parsons is the top columnist. Hedda Hopper is the top columnist. Jimmy Starr, Harrison Carroll, Sheila Graham. These are all people. I mean, Sheila Graham was, Scott Fitzgerald's mistress. I mean, these are people they make movies about. And each of them had their own planter of them. They were in competition with each other. And the planters, therefore, were in competition with each other. We were competing to get the best story for our plantee. Well, there's only one person now, me. I am now planting every one of them. I take Hedda Hopper to dinner at Chase's on Wednesday nights. I take Harrison Carroll to wherever he wants to go, racetrack. I take Phil Shore of the LA Times to the Duck Press in downtown Los Angeles. I don't think it's there anymore. It's a very famous restaurant. So I'm gaining weight like crazy because I'm always winding down. And I mean, I did things like we had a picture called Light in the Piazza come out. George Hamilton, Mimeo, who just passed away, and Sana Brazzi, Olivia Dab. I had to send it over to Luella Parsons' home screen. LaRue, cater an Italian meal at her house. And I had 3 musicians standing outside her living room playing the theme from the You think we got a good review? Bet you're, so that's kind of what I was doing. I was a real hustler and
a real showman.
Within months of being there as a mailman, I was made a senior publicist, making, I think, $250 a week. So I went from $40 or $50 a week to $250 in months. I was making more money than my father. My father was a school teacher. He was making a little over half that. So that's sort of my show business, how I got started in show business.
That is incredible. You were 21. You're 22.
21 years old.
21 years old.
Wow.
I turned 22 in December of that year. I mean, I started in June. Ben-Hur was opened in the fall during football season. I later discovered that I hated the anonymity of being a press agent. So I thought, I got to get out of here. So I went into my boss, who was very jealous of me and his staff. He protected us. He loved us. And we were his people. And he would do anything to keep us. He hated private publicists. He hated Rogers and Cowan. Meanwhile, a new pitcher is coming on the lot. Paul Newman, Lawrence Harvey, Claire Bloom, Edward G. Robinson, William Shatner, when nobody knew who William Shatner was. And a movie called The Outrage, directed by Marty Ritt, did HUD. It was then arguably the best received Hollywood movie in years. And I thought, I want that picture. It had a lot of pedigree, a lot of things to write about, a lot of things to tell stories about. I could do this job in my sleep. I'm going to listen to how Strickland goes in for a meeting. Well, Martin Ritt and Paul Newman have private publicists, Rogers and Cowan. They want them to have an office on the lot so that they can have their publicists. We don't need one of your publicists. And they're beating the crap out of Howard. And Howard is fighting back, stuttering through all of it. But he's fighting back as best he can. He's a powerful guy, even with the stutter. Maybe because of the stutter. This was the opposite of Bob Evans giving a spiel who talked so fast you didn't even understand what he was talking about. And Howard came back kind of a whip going. And that's when I walked into Howard's office and said, I want to do this picture. He says, sit here. Don't leave. Went back down to Martin Ritt's office. So I tell you what, I'm going to give you my best man of the department. The guy who did Ben-Hur, the guy who did Lolita, the guy who did this and that. I'm going to take him out of my department. He's going to become exclusively yours. If you're not happy in 60 days, we'll bring in Roger. So Marty Ritt said, okay. So I went down to visit Marty Ritt at his home, talk to him. And while I'm waiting for him to come downstairs to see me, I'm looking at his coffee table. And there's a magazine, Films and Filming. And there's these little magazines that he reads. So I don't say anything. I meet Marty, we talk, we get to like each other a little bit. And a couple of weeks later, he's on the cover of Films and Filming. And he calls me up. He said, "You see this thing?" I said, "Yeah, I saw it." I went on location with Barney, and I was invited everywhere. Every night I had dinner with Paul Newman, Lawrence Harvey, Claire Blow, Martin Ritt. That's the name of our cinematographer, a great Chinese cinematographer whose name just went out of my head. Terrific guy.
Jimmy Wong.
Jimmy Wong.
Jimmy Wong Howe.
Yeah.
Thank you. Whoever helped me with that one.
That was Melissa.
Okay. Thank you, Melissa.
You're welcome.
And we had dinner together every night of the week. I am in my glory. I'm having the best time of my life. This thing's not so bad. No one treats me badly. No one looks down on me. I'm not anonymous at all. I am, Martin Ritt calls me kid, and we're having a great time. I take him to USC. I start up a series of programs at USC. As a professor at USC, part-time, called Arthur Knight, who was the critic for the Saturday Review. And he was now a part-time professor of cinema at USC. I got Arthur Knight to invite, I had Martin Ritt come down to speak to the kids, to show them Barney Ritt ran his first movie that he'd ever made for the kids. I talked about it afterwards. And I get little glimmers of little quotes that I can use to plant with Army Archer or whatever. So it gets into the trade, say. Barney's happy. His ego is being stroked by all these kids. And Arthur Knight thinks I'm a genius. So I've now got a conduit. I can bring in anybody I want into that. I'm doing a great job. But Marty says to me, "Kid, what is your problem? I'm trying to get Marty's account to hire you. And you keep turning them down. They have now offered you twice what you're making at MGM. And you've turned them down. Why? What are you trying to do?" I said, "Marty, I don't want to work for Rush. I want to work for you." "What do you mean you want to work for me?" I said, "I will work for you what MGM is paying. You don't have to pay me what Rogers. That's less money than you're paying Rogers' account. So you'll save money on the deal. Let me be your associate. Teach me how to make it." So Marty had me into every editing session. I'm sitting there hours a day in editing rooms, learning how to do it. And we got the job yet, but it's all going to happen because his next movie is The Spy Who Came In From the Cold with Richard Burton. Paramount's going to make the picture. And I'm set as the associate producer. Everybody's okay with it. And one day, we're having lunch together. I tell Howard, of course, Howard Strickland, he is livid. Livid. Howard's the breaks. So the opportunity of a lifetime, I got to take it. Other producers will caution me against it, so I'm making a terrible mistake. But I wanted to do it. Having lunch now in the executive section of the dining room, Marty Ritt, my new boss to be, and Howard comes over and he says, "Hey, took my best guy." Marty says, "Too bad, fella." He's making fun of him. He's giving him the rib. I said, "Yeah, it's too bad, though, about your movie." Marty says, "What do you mean about my movie?" He says, "Marty's the only one who knows anything about it. He wouldn't let anybody else on it. He handled everything." He says, "Now you're taking him to Paramount. I guess your picture's just going to escape." Marty turned ashen, and Howard walked away. And I just saw a great poker hand being played by a real expert. And I have no counter for that. Marty says, "Kid, you got to be careful here. You got to stay here with this movie. Work it out later." I knew it was over. What got worse was the movie came out. It was a disaster. Disaster. Terrible critical. Nobody went to the box office. I mean, probably the only movie that Paul Newman never earned a dime on. Barney Ritt called me. He sounded like he was on the ledge of the Plaza Hotel on about the 11th floor, like he was ready to drop down to the street. Said, "Kid," he says, "my power position at Paramount is dramatically reduced. I can't get you the job as associate producer. But I can get you the job as a press agent on the movie." I didn't want to be a press agent. I had a very the opposite experience following Marty with a director by the name of Tony Richardson, who won the Academy Award for Tom Jones. He was there to do Evil and Laws, The Lump. He gave Howard Strickland the same trouble that Marty. I became known as the guy who did the troubled movies.
That's a tough place to be.
Yep.
Morgan Hodgins got all the big productions, and I got all the big producers, and I got all the assholes. When he said in my department.
You could sweet talk them.
Yeah, but I was game for it.
Yeah.
There I was working with John Calley, Tony Richardson, Terry Southern, great novelist at the time, big hero of mine. And my next picture was going to be The Cincinnati Kid with Steve McQueen and Patty Chayefsky and Marty Ranso. So I've got it lined up. The experience with Tony Richardson was so terrible. It was so demeaning. It was so incredible. For years, I walked around with a piece of paper in my back pocket. It was my speech that I was going to use when I won an Academy Award, which was to thank Tony Richardson. Because had he not been such a miserable son of a bitch, I'd still be a publicist, and not what he is. That was my. And the miracle is, I decided not to give up when I did win my first Emmy.
I was going to say, you had an opportunity.
Oh, no, I'd been running for years. I finally just got past. I did cost the guy jobs, though. I mean, when a couple times he wanted to work on projects of mine, and I would say to the agent, "Are you kidding me?" Awful. I say that about very few people. So I was really done now. I could not be. So at that time, that's when the outrage failed. Organizers came to me and said, I got a movie called Dr. Zhivago, which is going to start up 6 months or 8 months, whatever it was. You want it, you could be the unit publicist on that. Dr. Zhivago is being shot in the cold, in the snow, as you may remember. So I go to my wife and say, look, where do you want to live? You want to live in Paris? You want to live in London? You want to live in Rome? Where do you want to go? Pack up the kids, we're going. She didn't want to do it. But she was a stand-up date. She would have gone where I wanted. But I thought, this is it. This is what I'll do. This is going to be my career. And I got a phone call from my father-in-law. He says, I got some issues. He says, I've got a new television series. I got 2 movies. I got this. I'm overwhelmed. I need help. I want you to come here and be my associate. And I want somebody in the family. He says, I don't trust somebody else. Now, I don't know to this day whether my wife went to her stepfather, and said, Daddy, I don't want to go to London, Paris, or wherever. And I don't want to take the kids there. By the way, it would have been a tough job for her. Imagine.
Yeah.
I was going to have a job. I knew a driver to take me around everywhere. She was going to have to figure out how to keep house in a foreign language and get the kids to school. I don't blame her. Now, she says, or has told me, that she never did that. But I'm not so sure. Coincidence of time is pretty impressive. So anyway, I got the job. And I went over there, and it turns out it was one of the best experiences. Aaron, who, not the most articulate guy in the world, was a great natural teacher. And I was let in everywhere. And he was a much better film editor than Barney Redford. And I really learned my craft. I can tell you, there was a guy by the name of Joe Silver. There was a gal by the name of, I don't remember her name now. I'm not even trying to remember. He was the head of the department of editing at Fox. When I say Fox, she was saying that Daryl Zanuck was the best film editor she ever saw. The head of the editor. The second best was Aaron Rosen. Now, I can tell you this. I'm better than Aaron. I learned how to do it better than Aaron. And Daryl Zanuck and Aaron are both dead. That makes me the best. And I still believe that to be true. And that was my specialty as a producer. I began to learn how to tell a story.
What do you think it was about producing as opposed to being in PR that was of more interest to you?
Well, first of all, several things. In my day at the studio, at MGM Studios, directors were transients. Writers had these little cubbyhole offices, patches on their sleeve, other patches on their elbows. Producers had all the great offices. They were the guys I saved seats for at the premieres. They were the guys who I paid real attention to. I wanted to be one of them. And they really were the storytellers. The definition of a producer in those days is the same definition, by the way, it is today for television, and in those days in movies. Producer is a storyteller. He decides what story to tell to an audience. He then goes about putting together the elements to make that possible. The right writer to adapt the material. He may write it himself. The right director to direct the material. He might direct it himself. But the first guy on the job, the storyteller, the inventor, is the producer. And the last guy on the job, the guy after the director's going off to another movie, after the writer's writing something else, producer's still there, promoting his movie, going out in the hustings, getting people to watch that picture. I remember being a publicist once going to a meeting with a producer. This producer, whose name is not important to your audience, they wouldn't know who he is. He's a big producer in his day. And made a picture, and we were meeting with myself and a senior publicist. I was still a kid. And he says, well, good luck on this one. I haven't a clue to tell you how to sell this. And as we walked out, my friend turned to me and said, why did he make it then? He was right. Mm-hmm. I got it right away. You have to know who you're making the movie for. You got to know who your audience is. You have to have a reason for making that movie. Otherwise, you know why you're making it because it's a book that somebody else handed you and said, oh, you are the storyteller. You know who your audience is. You know who you have to talk to about this. So I learned that Alfred Hitchcock could direct a musical anytime he wanted to. Big hotshot director. Everybody wanted to work with Alfred Hitchcock. If he said, I want to do a musical, they'd let him do it. But Alfred Hitchcock, the producer, wouldn't let him. Because Alfred Hitchcock, the producer, knew that every time the leading lady opened her mouth to sing, people would expect her to scream. Walt Disney was the producer. I can't name a director of Walt Disney movies offhand, but everybody knows a Disney movie when they see it. It used to be that way with Pandora Berman. It used to be that way with Arthur Freed. It used to be that way with Joe Pasternak. These guys all had a signature. They all had a certain kind of movie they made. And that's what I wanted to do. And that's, by the way, what it was in television.
I was going to say.
They don't call it that. They call it in television. They call it the showrunner.
Right.
The guy who runs the show.
Right.
The proliferation of credits is so out there. Everybody's called a producer now. There are 20 producer credits on the street. It's embarrassing. I fought for years against the proliferation of credits. A losing battle. And ultimately, they came up with another name, which is never on the screen. But everybody in the industry knows who it is. Showrunner. I was the showrunner. I'm the guy who said Christie Cagney wouldn't say that. I'm the guy who approved every final edit, who approved every music cue, approved every actor, every costume, everything. I delegated some stuff, but it was my show.
The television producer was kind of the owner of the show.
That's right.
And that made a very, very different producer.
Huge.
Like a different way of how television got made.
Mm-hmm.
Huge.
Can you talk to that a little bit? Because you kind of produced across into kind of the new worlds of the writer-producer, basically.
When I began at television, I'm working for Aaron Rosenberg, as you may remember from my earliest. And the television series Aaron had, it's a series called Daniel Boone with Fess Parker.
I remember it. I watched it.
There you go. And he says, you take the job. He says, you're ready. You're it. I'll pay you $1,000 a week. So I just quit a job for $35,000. Now I'm going to get paid $50,000. So I said, look, we'll talk about it when you get back. I said, I don't. So I read a couple of scripts. They were just horrific. And I went home to my wife, who was all excited about having this job. And I remember she was in the John, and I went in and I threw the script at her feet. And I said, you read this. You still want me to do it when you finished? I said, I'll do it. She came out, to her credit. She said, this stuff's awful. You don't have to do it. I understand why you want it. So I kept thinking about it. I could fix this. I could do this better. It's going to be a learning experience. I'm going to get paid for it. So I think I'm going to do it. So Aaron Rosenberg returns, and I said I was debating whether or not to wear a coonskin cap when you walked in the room. He didn't get the joke. I said, I'm telling you, I'll take the job. Oh, okay. Turns out it wasn't his job to offer. Aaron Rosenberg owned 20% of the show. Fess Parker owned 30% of the show. And I got a phone call from Aaron. The decision is going to be Fess Parker's. He's on his way down to see you. It's you or two other guys. Good luck. Totally unprepared for this meeting. Or about as unprepared as you could get. I didn't. I'd been boning up on the series for my own purpose, thinking I had the job. Fess walks into my office, and we have a nice conversation. He wants to know if I'm my own man, and I talked to him about that. And I talked about what I think is wrong with the show, how he's a great star. He's not being served well by the material. And what I see its future being, what I think can be done with it. And he thanks me and he leaves. I got two other guys to see. Guys, I appreciate it. And two other guys. That night, about 7 o'clock, the phone rings. It's him. He says, hello, boss. And I had the job.
Nice.
Now, I'm going to tell you one more Daniel Boone story because I think it tells a lot about producing and what it's all about. I'm preparing scripts. I'm learning it in the job. I'm learning for it's just a picture, good, bad, or indifferent. It has to be 46 minutes long. And I've got a lot of people working for me who are spies for Fess Parker. An associate producer and a head of the story department. Both were hired by Fess's agents. And they were Fess's. And I know they're telling him whatever they're observing. Jim Aubrey, who was the head of CBS, had come out in TV Guide that week or the week before. And CBS won 6 of 7 nights on television. Only night they didn't win was Thursday night on NBC. That was Daniel Boone, 7 o'clock, leading into Perry Mason, leading into the Dean Martin Show, and we were golden. In those days, we watched television the way God meant us to. No remote control. 3 channels. 3 networks. That was it. No Fox, no Netflix, no Amazon, no cable, nothing. 3 networks and a couple of local stations.
1 episode a week.
1 episode a week. And, no streaming. And you didn't have a remote control, so you didn't get out of your chair and change the channel. So what you tended to do was, they found out, when you watched the show at 7 o'clock at night, you just kept it there. And you did just one show led into another. That was the version of streaming in the old days.
Yeah.
So Jim Aubrey said, this situation is no longer tolerable for us. CBS is going to win Thursday nights. It's going to be called Double Feature Night at CBS. And Cimarron Strip with Stu Whitman, who was a B-movie star. Never done television. Well, Cimarron Strip was going to be the most expensive show ever made for network television. Paul King was sent to CBS, because Bill Paley liked him, to run that show. Not to run it from the network perspective, be a network executive. So he's having lunch with Fess Parker, and he tells Fess Parker, get ready to pack your lunch. This is over.
They're coming for you.
They're coming for you. And this show is fabulous. It's fabulous. I've never seen anything like it. Fess Parker goes into a deep depression. And Cliff Bowl comes and tells me. So the pipeline's going to work both ways. That's good news. So I call Paul King. I say, Paul, you impressed the hell out of my star. What's going on? Tell him. And told him about Cimarron Strip. I told him that it's the best thing that's ever happened. Fantastic. I told him we got a $350,000 per episode budget. I had $150,000 make my show. So I said, wow, that's a lot of money. I said, who are you hiring for directors? They were all directors I could hire. Who are you hiring for writers? Well, writers are available to me, my price range. Who are your guest stars? Well, there was those 3 actors, all people I could hire. I thanked him. I said, where's all the money go? And then it dawned on me. Stunts and horse falls. All the money's
going into stunts.
They knew when you should zag, and everybody else is zagging. Called the writers in. And I said, we're going to introverse this show. I can't compete with Cimarron Strip. We're going to do shows of character. We're going to do Moby Dick, only it's a bear instead of a whale. An individual comes to town, like the Rainmaker, how he produces shorthand now. Influences everybody's lives. These scripts began to get, because they were about something pretty darn good. I called Joel Oliesky, who was the best writer I'd ever met in Hollywood, won an Oscar. I called him up, Joel, I hear you want to direct. He says, absolutely. I said, how bad? What do you mean, how bad? I said, how bad do you want to direct? So I want to direct very badly. I said, write me 3 Daniel Boones and you can direct. Well, I got 3 of the best Daniel Boone scripts you ever heard of in your life. And going up and out with these good scripts, I suddenly getting good actors. Emmy and Oscar winning actors now coming because parts are good. And incidentally, because they're small, pictures are cheaper. We're not only going over budget, making shows below the budget. Fess Parker's best friend on the show is Ted White, the stuntman. Ted White made $250 a week plus stunts. On an average week, he would make $1,100, $1,200. So many stunts there were, a lot of fights. In this show, Daniel Boone maybe smacks somebody once where he really gets out of sorts. He hits one drunk guy maybe.
Yeah, Daniel Boone was like MacGyver. He solved problems.
Yeah, Ted White's now making $250 a weekend. He is not happy. And he goes to Fess. This producer you got, he says, the next thing you know, he's going to have Daniel Boone going around the force in a cape. So Fess Parker doesn't come to me. Fess Parker goes to Sharon Rosenberg. Sharon said, what the hell are you doing? And I told him my philosophy of contrary opinion. I told him about Cimarron Strip and that I was doing the opposite. And he looked at me like I was a nutcase. His eyes went heavenward. And he said, show's going to get canceled anyway. Cimarron Strip's going to take everything. He says, might as well travel with your own flag fly. He walked out of my office. I didn't see the rest of the season. I'm making the show. Now it's summertime. We don't go on the air until late September. I'm in a vacuum. And everybody on the show knows that we're going to be destroyed. I don't know what I'm doing, and that Cimarron Strip is the hit of a lifetime. I am exhausted. I go to my doctor. He says, I'm putting you in the hospital.
You're like 28.
I'm working 19 hours a day, 7 days a week, sleeping in my office. I have no allies. I'm alone. Crew won't talk to me. I said, shoot me up, doc. He's giving me multiple vitamin B shots every other day. Literally, when I go home at night, I open the hood of my car to make sure a bomb is in. That's how it was. This is a union crew in the days when the unions were tough. I am literally checking my car for bombs. People have been killed in Hollywood for less. So that's the pressure I was in. September comes. Cimarron Strip will premiere a week before Daniel. I sit in my office, which was a very grand office.
You got your big office.
In such a size. I had my own. I had my office. Very nice office. And I turn on the show. There it is. Great blasted music, fabulous music, and red letters. Cimarron Strip, all done in this kind of looks like fencing material, classic Western stuff. And there's a scene, the open country. There's Stu Whitman scratching his beard like this. And then they cut to 40 dots. 40 dots. On television in 1968, on a 19-inch television screen, 20 horses and 20 riders look like 40 dots. I know, and there's Stu Whitman scratching his beard. And I know that next week, I got Fess Parker, the kid who plays his son, doing the Boy Scout manual in the woods, in the wilderness. Father-son stuff. It's glorious. And I am smiling. And I walk out of my office, and the art director, production manager, Ted Schultz, what do you think, boss? I said, gentlemen, we are a very large hit. Following week, the ratings come out. We are number 9 in the country. And Cimarron Strip is canceled the following.
I was going to say, I've never heard of Cimarron Strip, but I sure have heard of Daniel Boone.
Wes Parker came in to see gradually my office. He says, boss, I will never doubt you again. And I said, does that mean I can fire some of the people around here? He says, you can do whatever you want to. You're the boss. And I walked down to the office, and I fired 2 guys down the hall.
The ones you thought put a bomb in your car.
The spies.
Wow.
Now, I have failed in my life, but so far, so good at that point.
I got to tell you, I think you like being in it. There's no way out of this situation. And then oops, I won.
Well, I like to win. I do like to win.
All right, we're going to have to take a break so we can drink some water. Okay. And but we're going to come back and we got to get to Cagney and Lacey.
I think so.
But this has been amazing because we're like, I went to USC, so I totally get everything you're talking about. And then again, Sharon and I are both like movie buffs, so this has been pretty amazing. So let's take a break, and then we're going to come back and we'll see everybody back here, or we'll hear everybody back here in a minute.
Sounds good.
All right, welcome back.
Excellent.
There you go.
So we got to talk about Cagney and Lacey.
Writing team who had never done drama before. Barbara Avedon and Barbara Corday. Barbara Avedon, well-seasoned, all-pro, political activist. She's the one who wrote War is Not Healthy for Children and Other Living Things. It was a famous piece of the time. It was everywhere. Barbara wrote that, and she wrote many, many comedies. And she went into business with this young girl in her middle 20s, Barbara Corday, who was a former press agent from New York, come out here to be a writer. And they met through political activism. And I hired them to write their first drama. And one day I got a phone call saying, I don't know what the protocol is, but I'd like to have you over for dinner if you'd like to have dinner with me.
And this is Barbara Corday.
Barbara Corday. And I said, look, your protocol's fine. I said, you're a working woman. I'm a working guy. Why don't we go out to dinner? From that moment on, Barbara knew she found the right man for her. So we went out to dinner. And our second date was a movie. We went to see Scent of a Woman. Not the one with Al Pacino. The one with Vittorio Gassi. A black and white Italian movie with post-World War II. A comedy of the sexes. The audience was having a good time. And I was laughing. So I noticed out of the corner of my eye, sort of like a glare. And I looked over, and Barbara was white knuckling the chair she was sitting. And I leaned over and I said, are you all right? She said, this may be the ugliest, most sexist film I have ever seen. I said, you want to leave? She says, no. She says, watch. Later we'll talk. Now, sexist was not a term. I'm a 50s male, 50s heterosexual male. I don't know an awful lot about terms like that. And I was kind of baffled by it, but I sat there, and arguably the biggest miracle of my life happened about that. It was an epiphany. And the women weren't women. They were Hasidic Jews in my mind's eye. And what I was watching became the most anti-Semitic piece of propaganda I had ever seen. And I understood. That was the epiphany. That moment, I got it. I understood what was being talked about. And my life changed that moment on. It got me to thinking about it, looking for it. So that's that story. Barbara used to say, Barney's not a feminist, but he gets it. And I got it.
I like the other line that you mentioned in your book, which is her paraphrasing actress Lee Grant. I've been married to a chauvinist and married to a feminist.
Either one took out the garbage. She also came up with the most important line in terms of what Cagney Lacey is about. She said, it's a show about two women who happen to be cops, not two cops who happen to be women. And that was the essential difference. So that's what we were doing.
And so let me ask you this, because we talk about this about all our shows, and I'm just going to jump up front. Usually we wait till later. But did you set out to make a feminist show?
Oh, did I set out to make a feminist show? I set out, no. I set out to make a Paul Newman, Robert Redford buddy movie. Barbara taught me to read a lot of books. One of the books was Chloe Haskell's From Reverence to Rape, History of the Treatment of Women in the Homes. It's a fabulous book, which I recommend anybody who hasn't read it. And even if you have read it, maybe you should read it again. I believe it was in that book where I got that never in the history of movies and television has there been a buddy movie for women. There's never been a Paul Newman and Robert Redford. And I thought, why not make one? So I wanted to make a movie, not a television series. And it was a comedy. It was like, and I went to Ed Feldman, my friend, and he said, can they be cops? I said, sure, why not? So Barbara Avedon said he wanted to do it in New York because it was funnier than California. I said, why is that? Words with a K are fun. Words with So that's why I was in New York.
All right. So how does the buddy comedy cop movie become TV movie starring Loretta Swit and Tyne Daly?
All right. Well, we couldn't sell it as a movie. The only person in the movie business liked Sherry Lansing. Sherry Lansing got it. She went to her boss, or then boss, was Danny Melding, and she kept bugging about it. He kept throwing her out of the room. She kept saying, you got to see these guys. And finally he said, all right, just to placate you, I'll give you $1 million, make this movie for $1.5 million with Raquel Welch and Anne Margaret. So you got to do. Well, first of all, you couldn't buy those two women those days for $1.5 million. But even if you could, I would make it with them. And it was silly. Now, in fairness, maybe Danny Melding knew something because Raquel Welch went on to become a pretty good actress. And Anne Margaret got her chops in Carnal Knowledge and other movies. At that time, they had done none of that. So it was feminist in that sense. We knew that it was a breakthrough for women, but it wasn't, we were being very obviously political. In those days, in that show, in that movie, there was only a male John. Everything about being a cop was male-oriented. And the men didn't like him. The men gave him all the scut jobs. So in that sense, it was a feminist. So I knew that. We were doing that. Barbara said the movie's going to pass you by. Got to sell this. So I went to every television network. And I tried to sell it as a comedy, drama, failed. Then I tried to sell it as a drama, comedy. It's a different group of people. Failed. I then went to CBS. Last place because I had the least connection. And Peter Frankovich, son of the famous Frank, called me up and said, Buddy, this is a television. We got a series here. I should take it to our series people. Peter, I'm going to level it. I've done that. They turned me down. This is damage goods. You're my last hope. I'm not going to turn you down. I like it. Let's make it. I take Barbara Corday with me to CBS. We pitch a new plot, and he buys it. And we made the movie, some call it a pilot, Toronto, and it was a big hit.
Loretta Swit, Tyne Daly. And again, I'm very excited you shot it in Toronto, and I found that out from reading your book because it really does look like you shot it in New York. And I know you did a couple of days in New York.
Yeah, 2 or 3 days. I learned from Dick Rosenblum, who was an executive at Filmways, who had learned from Joe Sargent, who's a very fine television, how to make a movie look like you shot it somewhere else. And the way you do that is all your important location stuff in the first 4 or 5 pages. If you have anything left over, you can maybe pepper in the script once or twice later. But if you establish, you win them over, you got them. You convince them they're in New York at the beginning of the picture. Then they're in New York from then on. Then a building is a building.
I actually really love that opening to the movie because it does feel very New York in the 70s or 80s. For the audience that hasn't seen it yet, Lacey picks up Cagney from her one-night stand, and then they're driving to work, and they see somebody basically running out of a building that's clearly stolen something. Clearly a thief. And so they pull over and they go to chase him, and he runs and dashes into a building when somebody is walking out of their apartment. And then they have to buzz to get into the building. So they're trying to buzz somebody to let them into the building. And meanwhile, another person basically steals Lacey's car, of the police officer's car, while they're trying to get into the building to chase the other thief. It was just like a lot of layers upon layers, and it was really quite lovely. And you're like, oh, I totally buy this is New York City. And there's just so much character in that first opening.
Well, that opening was written by the two of them.
So you make this TV movie, and it airs, and what happens next?
Well, a couple of things before it airs you should know about. We were in New York to shoot 2 or 3 days. We were so convincing, it did it so well, that friends of mine called me when the show was on the air months later, said, how come you were in New York for it? You didn't need to call me. I said, oh, for 48 hours. But I didn't call one person, Pops. Called my friend Michael Fuchs, who was the head of HBO. We used to play tennis together with pals. I said, hey, Michael, I said, you're up in town for a day. Want to have dinner? He says, I'm double dating. He says, because he's like, I should come along. So I did. And nothing else. He's sitting there talking to the husband of one of the women about some movie the guy's making based on a play for HBO. And I'm sitting between the two women. One, turns out, is a New Yorker who is moving to Los Angeles and who is a great friend, this is his friend, of Harvey Shepard, the head of CBS. She finds out that I don't know Harvey Shepard. She says, I'll introduce you when you're in Los Angeles. Well, on my left is Suzanne Levine, editor-in-chief of Ms. Magazine. He's still in my heart.
This is 1980, 1981? Yeah.
What are you doing in New York? She says to me. So I tell her what I'm doing in New York. She says, I'm interested in that. We wind up on the cover of Ms. Magazine. The show that asks the question, can women be buddies under pressure? And a little piece of Gloria's side said, if you like this show, write to CBS. This is important stuff. We get to LA, and I am now finishing movies. They should know that making movies is a long and painful. You start off with a pure idea. I had this beautiful idea, a buddy movie for women. And I got 2 women who know their stuff, clear vision. You then begin a whole series of compromises with electrical current, with mechanical equipment, with a crew, with the director, the writer, with God. Will the sun shine or will it rain? And each of these things require a compromise. Now, the fewer compromises you make, the better your movie is. You're going to make compromises. And the first reaction you have upon seeing your movie assembled together in the director's cut is to think if you can get to the bathroom in time to vomit, or you're going to vomit right there. You set out to raise a child, become a Harvard medical school graduate, and you wind up with a 14-year-old dropout who does drugs. The trick is, the movie maker, the trick is to remember, throwing up, you have to remember, it's still your child. And you find a way to fall in love with it all over. Barbara Avedon, she is in dismay, in tears.
This is at the director's cut screening.
Director's cut.
Okay.
I thank the director and thanks for your work and I share the preview. The reason Barbara Avedon was in tears was not because somebody missed a joke or because the production didn't look like we spent much money on a scene or this casting thing didn't work. We're all too professional. She was in tears because the very thing she said, we all set out to do, we had sabotaged. Cagney was strident and unlikable. We told everybody that you're going to love these people. Women can do this, just like men can do it. And we had just proven the opposite. All the men who said women can't be buddies, going to be proven. Can't make this kind of a movie. And what the flaw was, I regret to say, it was a woman who worked very hard for us, Loretta Swit. Loretta Swit became a television star as the foil on MASH. She was the one nobody liked. She was the one the guys made fun of, tortured. And we loved it as an audience. That's what she was good at. Now, she might have been able to be directed out of that, but she was a star. And our director never occurred to him. He just let her be Loretta. And Loretta was playing Hot Lips in a Cagney uniform. So I said to the editor, I want you to play the entire movie on Loretta's back, over her shoulder, or in the master angle. Show as little of her as you can. So we'll come back to that later. Right now, that's your assignment. Take 10 days to do that. So the whole movie was recut with that. And then I refined. And that was the movie. Now, Dick Roosevelt sees the movie. Avedon sees it. Barbara Avedon comes over, gives me a hug, says, you are a genius. I cannot believe this. And Dick Roosevelt says, it's phenomenal. I've never seen a transformation like this in my life. They love the movie. But it's not that good. I don't want to be embarrassed. Barney, it is good. I said, I'd like to rent a room at 20th Century Fox. We'll have our family and friends come. So that's what we did. Loretta came with her agent, Tyne King, and family and friends. Full house, 200 people. They laughed in all the right places. They cheered in all the right places. And I thought, this is interesting. You can say the music cue doesn't work. You can say the photography isn't A+. You can say a couple of actors aren't all they should say that the directing is a little flat here and there. But you can't say it is incredible. Nobody said, I don't believe two women. And I thought, that's the accomplishment. That's what I'm in love with.
Because that's what they were saying to you when you were trying to sell it. That two women can't do this.
That's right. And Gloria asked the question, can women be buddies under pressure? Can they do it? And they could. That's what the movie proved. And that's what I fell in love with. Everywhere the same reaction. Women audience cheering. And I said, we are on to something. The movie goes on the air. Oh, then they come to me, press agents or film boys. And they start talking about all the things we're going to do. Parties are going to, screenings are going to happen. Fellas, we got There's one campaign. One thing. You get this magazine or it hits the shelves, get 500 copies of these magazines and send that every editor in the country. I said, Barney, this magazine doesn't sell that many issues. It's not going to be that big a deal. I said, let me tell you something. It's a opinion-making publication. The New York Times will pay attention, as Gloria Steinem says. Washington Post will pay attention. So this magazine says, but watch this. And that's what we did. And we had a 48 share. 48% of the people in America watching television watch that. That's a hit of monumental versions.
And by the way, Loretta Swit was fantastic in it. So whatever you did for her, she comes across great.
Good. I haven't seen one like that. I haven't seen it yet.
And I have to admit, I was a little skeptical of her before I saw it. And she was great. She was fantastic.
It does not feel like Hot Lips.
Right.
It really does feel like a different character.
We cut those things out.
It works.
Loretta liked the movie. Loretta, but she said to me, I'm not everybody close to me. I said, Loretta, you're in every scene. I said, you can't it's like a variety show. You got to hear the host. You can't let the audience get tired of it. She doesn't talk to me today. I don't know if it's because I wrote that story or whether because Spring feels I should have waited for her, like, hey, and I would have been waiting 2 years. I was no wait.
Yeah.
Never wasn't going to wait.
All right. So it comes out. It's a huge, huge hit. Then what happens? We're going to have to make this a two-parter. Yeah. Well, okay. We're going to have to end part one of our interview here. But our listeners will be tuning in next episode for part two, our rest of our interview with Barney Rosenzweig, talking about Cagney and Lacey.
We hope you'll come back and listen to part two. It's going to be just as fascinating as part one.
Our audiography for today includes two websites. The Cagney and Lacey official website is at cagneyandlacey.com. And then Barney Rosenzweig's site is at barney-cagneyandlacey.blogspot.com.
Find out more about us on the website 80stvladies.com.
Help support our show at patreon.com/80stvladies. Thank you so much for supporting this show. We cannot do it without you. Be sure to tune in to part two of our interview with Barney Rosenzweig, the creator of Cagney and Lacey. We look forward to listening to our next episode with you.
We hope 80s TV Ladies brings you joy and laughter and lots of fabulous new and old shows to watch, all of which will lead us forward toward being amazing ladies of the 21st century.